Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of fascinating insights and distill them into the most important nuggets of knowledge for you, our dedicated listener. Today, we're embarking on, a truly profound journey, I think, into the world of identity and happiness. And we've tailored this especially for you, perhaps someone with a background in elementary education who's newly curious about how we become who we are. And maybe, just maybe, how you can help young learners embark on their own journeys of self-discovery, too. Forget fleeting joys for a moment, the kind of momentary happiness that, well, it comes and goes. We're talking about something deeper today, a more enduring form of well-being, one that comes from truly living in alignment with your authentic self. Think of it as discovering your inner blueprint for a fulfilling life, understanding the core of what makes you uniquely thrive, and then, building your life around that core. And of course, the profound implications this has for guiding children right from those early years. Our compass for this deep dive is a really comprehensive look into eudaimonic identity theory, Identity as Self-Discovery, by Alan S. Waterman. He's a prominent psychologist who has dedicated, decades really, to exploring these very questions of genuine human flourishing.
He's really the one who bridged that gap, taking ancient philosophical wisdom and grounding it in modern psychological research. It's fascinating work.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack this theory, understand its ancient philosophical roots, stretching way back to classical Greece. Then we'll connect it to contemporary psychological thought and, crucially, see what the research actually says about how this plays out in real lives. Most importantly, we'll explore what this all means for personal growth, at any age, and vitally for fostering well-being in that sense of purpose in educational settings, especially relevant for those early elementary years. Okay, so let's open up this treasure chest of ideas and begin our deep dive. The whole concept of identity formation, it brings up such fundamental questions for us, doesn't it? As parents or teachers, or even just as individuals trying to figure out our own lives, we wonder, how do we truly figure out who we are meant to be? And are some paths or choices inherently better than others for finding that, that deeply resonant sense of self? As educators, you constantly see children making choices about friendships, about what subjects grab their attention, how they handle challenges. And you naturally wonder, are we guiding them towards something genuinely beneficial? Something that helps them build a solid foundation for their identity and long-term well-being?
These are precisely the questions, yeah. The big ones that Alan Waterman's work on eudaimonic identity theory really grapples with. He was building on the foundational ideas of Erik Erikson, who, famously theorized about the stages of psychosocial identity development. But Waterman, he really honed in on two core metaphors for how we approach this development: self-construction and self-discovery. Think about it like this. When you're deciding on, say, a new hobby or maybe a career path, do you feel like you're consciously building a persona? Like pulling together different traits and interests you admire, almost like constructing a Lego model? Or does it feel more like you're uncovering something that was always there? An innate inclination, maybe, like finding a hidden spring that was, always flowing beneath the surface. You just hadn't noticed it before. Self-construction, it draws heavily from existential philosophy. The idea is you're entirely free. You create yourself from this huge array of possibilities. You're building yourself anew, actively piecing together elements you find valuable from the world around you. It's very much an active creation process. But self-discovery, that's fundamentally different. It proposes that there's something that already exists within you. Waterman calls it your true self or your daemon. We'll definitely dig into that term later. And the journey is really about recognizing it, understanding it, and then actualizing it, bringing it to life. And if this true self genuinely exists, well, then it naturally serves as a powerful internal standard, doesn't it, for what constitutes a better identity choice. It implies there's this inherent set of potentials, like a unique blueprint, just waiting to be uncovered. And that blueprint then guides your decisions towards, greater fulfillment.
Right. So it's not just about making choices from like an infinite menu based on what seems appealing or convenient right now. Instead, we're talking about discovering the choices that are profoundly consistent with our innate nature, our unique set of predispositions and talents. It's not just about what you want to be based on, say, external influences, but perhaps what you are intrinsically meant to be, what allows you to truly flourish. And that concept, it resonates so much with the individual talents and inclinations you see in children, sometimes from a really young age, right?
Yeah.
Before they're even heavily influenced by external factors.
Exactly, those early sparks.
And to truly grasp the depth of eudaimonic identity theory, we actually have to go back quite a long way, all the way back to classical Hellenic philosophy, particularly Aristotle's monumental work, the Nicomachean Ethics. Now, Aristotle used the term eudaimonia to describe what he considered the best possible life, the most worthwhile or desirable way to live a human life. It's often translated simply as happiness, and I think that's where some of the modern confusion, maybe the simplification of his profound concept, often begins.
Well, absolutely. And that translation, happiness, while it's convenient, it really misses the mark. Because Aristotle emphatically rejected the idea that happiness was merely hedonia. That's subjective pleasure, the kind advocated by philosophers like Aristippus of Cyrene. Hedonia is just about getting what you want, satisfying desires, experiencing pleasant sensations or feelings, kind of regardless of what those desires are or where they come from. It's about immediate gratification, yeah. The pursuit of pleasure for pleasure's sake. Think of, I don't know, indulging in your favorite dessert or binge watching a show you love. Pure pleasure. Aristotle famously criticized this purely hedonistic approach. He called it completely slavish, since the life they decide on is a life of grazing animals.
Wow, it's quite a statement.
It is. He was essentially saying that a life focused only on sensory pleasure, without a higher purpose or, moral engagement, it reduces human experience. Makes it no different from that of an animal. It lacks the unique richness, the potential of human consciousness.
Okay, so this is where it really comes alive and gains its true significance then. Aristotle defined eudaimonia not as a feeling, not just pleasure, but as activity expressing virtue or excellence, the best within us. That's a profound distinction, isn't it? It's not just about feeling pleased with your life in a superficial way, but about actively having what is worth desiring and worth having in life. So while happiness today might make us think of, I don't know, fleeting joy, comfort, or maybe just contentment, Aristotle's eudaimonia points to something deeper, more robust, a state of being fully alive and engaged with one's highest potential, which is why philosophers often prefer flourishing as a translation for eudaimonia, right? Because it points to an objective statement about the proper ends for a person. A life lived excellently and well, not just the life that feels good moment to moment.
It's exactly. Flourishing. Like a tree that's not just surviving, truly thriving, bearing abundant fruit. That's the essence of eudaimonia. That analogy is perfect. It means that to live a eudaimonic life, we should actively strive to identify and then act on the best within us. Eudaimonism, therefore, it's a normative ethical system. It tells us how we ought to live to reach our highest good. It implies a kind of responsibility to oneself, to actualize these inherent potentials. And this brings us right back to that concept of the daimon, or true self, that unique set of potentialities within each person, the realization of which leads to the greatest fulfillment. It's an ideal, sure, but one that provides profound meaning and direction. It guides us towards self-realization as the ultimate criterion for making better identity choices. So think about it in the classroom. When an elementary school teacher helps a child discover maybe a hidden talent for, say, designing intricate structures with blocks, and then encourages them to pursue it further, maybe by providing more complex materials or challenging them with specific design problems, they're not just fostering a skill, are they? They're potentially guiding that child towards an activity that is more consistent with their daemon, and therefore arguably a demonstrably better choice for their long-term flourishing.
That makes perfect sense. And while Aristotle focused on eudaimonia as, an objective normative condition, a description of the good life, regardless of how it feels internally, contemporary philosophers and psychologists like Alan Waterman have recognized something crucial. They saw that it also involves a distinctive and incredibly important subjective experience. It's not just about being virtuous and living excellently, but also about the internal feeling of that virtuous and excellent activity. You don't just objectively flourish, you feel it.
Exactly. We inherently reflect, don't we, on whether we're moving towards self-realization, towards activating our best selves. And we experience a profound sense of well-being, a deep satisfaction when we are. Conversely, we feel a persistent sense of frustration, maybe unease or even alienation when we're not living authentically. Waterman specifically calls these internal signals feelings of personal expressiveness. Eudaimonia, as a subjective state, therefore includes this whole cluster of deeply positive, cognitive, affective experiences. Things like feelings of rightness about one's actions, a sense of centeredness, strength of purpose, deep competence, profound fulfillment, feeling truly like being who one really is, and having that profound sense of doing what one was meant to do. So it really is both things, an objective goal, a life well lived in accordance with one's virtues and potentials, and a highly positive, deeply resonant subjective condition, the internal experience of that life being well lived.
That distinction really crystallizes it. It makes absolute sense that if you're truly living in line with your best self, with your daemon, you'd feel profoundly good about it. That internal aha moment, maybe, when something just clicks or when a challenging task feels deeply satisfying, even if you're not getting immediate external praise or recognition. That's precisely the kind of intrinsic motivation and deep satisfaction that I think teachers often strive to cultivate in students. Recognizing it goes far beyond just a gold star or a good grade.
Mm-hmm. And building on that, Telfer, another contemporary philosopher, she provided a very insightful explanation of the relationship between eudaimonia and hedonia. She proposed that eudaimonia is a sufficient condition for hedonia, but not a necessary one.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Sufficient but not necessary.
Right. So what it means is if you're experiencing eudaimonia, that deep fulfillment of acting on your true potentials, that sense of flourishing, you are almost certainly also experiencing hedonia or pleasure. The activity you're engaged in will feel good, enjoyable, maybe even exhilarating. However, you can experience hedonia, simple pleasure, without necessarily experiencing eudaimonia. For example, you can definitely enjoy eating a delicious piece of chocolate cake or relaxing on the couch watching TV, both hedonistic experiences, right, without them necessarily being deeply self-expressive or eudaimonic activities. They don't usually tap into your core potentials. This asymmetrical relationship, it's actually been supported by empirical tests.
Yeah.
They consistently show that while eudaimonia and hedonia often go together, eudaimonia is the more profound, the more encompassing, and the more enduring state.
Yeah.
And for an elementary school teacher, this has direct implications, doesn't it? It means understanding that while making a lesson fun, adding that hedonic element can definitely increase initial engagement and motivation. True, sustained motivation, deep learning, and that profound sense of fulfillment for a student will likely come from activities that genuinely tap into their daemon, leading to eudaimonia.
Yeah.
It's about helping them find what truly lights them up from the inside, rather than just, providing external incentives or making everything a game.
Okay, so the daemon is clearly this core central concept threaded right through Waterman's theory. It's what distinguishes it from simpler notions of identity or just plain happiness. But what exactly is it in psychological terms? Is it something we're born with, like an innate blueprint, or is it something we develop, maybe construct over time? For those of us in education, understanding this could truly transform how we approach individual student needs and how we view their potential.
Yeah, it's a great question. From a philosophical perspective, the daemon makes ethical eudaimonism an essentialist philosophy. And an essentialist philosophy, just to put it simply, it posits that there's an inherent nature or essence to each individual. Think of it like this. A small acorn, right? Though it looks unassuming, it contains the inherent blueprint and potential to become a magnificent oak tree. Not a maple, not a pine.
Right, it's nature's to be an oak.
Exactly. The oak tree's daemon is to become an oak. Similarly, for a person, well, it started as a guiding spirit given at birth in ancient thought, like a guardian angel almost. But it quickly became internalized. You see this in Heraclitus' profound view that man's character is his daemon. Character is destiny, in a way. This evolution from an external guide to an internal character trait, that's crucial for modern psychology. So psychologically, the daemon refers to a person's intrinsic nature. That unique configuration of aptitudes and predispositions that we don't choose, we don't invent. Rather, it's something you uncover and then hopefully cultivate. Modern theories, they interpret the daemon not as some mystical entity, but as a complex interplay of interrelated psychological processes. It encompasses certain potentialities. Some are universal to humanity, like our capacity for language or abstract thought. But some are truly unique to each individual, like a specific talent for music, or an innate knack for empathetic understanding, or maybe a deep inclination toward scientific inquiry. These potentialities, they're present due to a combination of our physiology, our genetic inheritance, and also our early experiences. The daemon, then, refers to the processes, both intuitive, that gut feeling, and reasoned, by which these potentials are discovered, and crucially, how they come to attain the status of personally concordant goals, goals that feel truly yours to be actualized. Think of a child who, almost spontaneously, shows an innate knack for understanding patterns, maybe logical sequences, or have this natural curiosity about how things work, always taking things apart. These are early indicators, right? Potentials that might be part of their daemon, just waiting to be recognized and fostered.
That's a powerful insight. And what's fascinating here is, well, the idea that the subjective experiences that accompany actions consistent with our aptitudes are immediately distinguishable from those unrelated to our latent talents. It's not just that you're good at something eventually, but that it feels profoundly different, profoundly right when you're engaging a core potential, even if you're not immediately successful at it. It's like that internal compass signaling, yes, this is it. This is where you belong.
Precisely. These feelings of personal expressiveness, or eudaimonia, they serve as an incredibly potent internal feedback system. They reinforce activities that align with our aptitudes, promoting future engagement, sustained involvement. Imagine that child deeply absorbed in building a complex Lego structure, completely losing track of time. That's flow, right? Linked to eudaimonia. Even if they face a challenge, maybe a part collapses, that internal feeling of rightness, that deep satisfaction in the process itself that keeps them going. Without eudaimonia, without that internal resonance and deep satisfaction, continued effort in any activity, it tends to rely primarily on external factors. Things like praise, good grades, material rewards. And this highlights the profound, almost inseparable alliance between the daemon, the process of self-discovery, the journey of self-realization, and the concept of intrinsic motivation. From this perspective, intrinsic motivation isn't just about enjoying an activity. It's about the activity fitting who you are at a fundamental, essential level. It's about tapping into what we have a stronger potential to do well and what truly fulfills us.
That really reframes how we think about motivation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not simply about making learning fun with external rewards, which, let's face it, can be fleeting. It's more about helping children discover what genuinely resonates with their inner potential, what captures their deep absorption and personal expressiveness. This suggests that just making a task fun or rewarding it externally might get temporary engagement, sure, but it won't necessarily tap into that deeper, lasting drive that comes from connecting with a child's true potentials. For example, if a teacher makes reading fun with stickers and prizes, a child might read more because they want the reward. That's extrinsic. But if that child discovers a genuine passion for stories, feels personally expressive when immersed in a book, and seeks out reading on their own because it simply feels right to them, that's tapping into their daemon. That's eudaimonia in action. That distinction feels absolutely crucial for fostering sustainable learning and ultimately well-being. But this raises an incredibly important question. It's one that often comes up when we discuss innate potential or following your bliss, so to speak. If following your daemon leads to self-realization and fulfillment, does that always, by default, mean it leads to ethical and socially constructive behavior? I mean, what if someone's best potential is for something destructive? Or maybe for manipulating others for personal gain? As educators, we certainly want to foster positive growth, not just any kind of self-expression.
That's a critical point, absolutely. And it's one that philosophers like Hobbes and Nietzsche and psychologists like Freud and Rollo May, they recognize this acutely. Human nature, it contains both destructive and creative potentials. That's just the reality. So if the daemon, as our intrinsic nature, includes both possibilities, then it's theoretically possible, yes, that even unethical activities could be experienced as personally expressive by certain individuals. They could feel right to them in a perhaps distorted way. This is where the theory acknowledges the profound complexity of human nature and the inherent need for external moral frameworks to guide our actions. It's not just about following internal feelings. Let's consider a few examples just to illustrate this. A talent for manipulation, for instance. It could indeed lead to Machiavellian self-enhancement, where a person uses their cunning and interpersonal skills for purely selfish gain, exploiting others without remorse. That could feel expressive to them. Or that same core talent could be channeled into being a highly effective motivational trainer, inspiring and guiding others toward positive change, using their persuasive abilities for collective good.
Same core potential, different outcome.
Exactly. Similarly, an innate talent for aggression, that raw, powerful drive. It could result in combative and destructive relationships, causing significant harm, or it could be sublimated, channeled constructively into a highly successful career in professional sports, where that drive and physical prowess are valued within defined rules. Even inclinations toward, say, solving complex puzzles, that could manifest as criminal activity, like masterminding heists. Or it could alternatively be channeled into a successful career in criminal detection, like a forensic investigator. Or maybe into writing captivating crime novels that explore human psychology.
Okay, so the aptitude or the potential itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's how it's expressed and the choices made about its application that ultimately determine its ethicality and its societal impact. This really puts a different kind of emphasis on character education, doesn't it? It's not just about teaching a set of rules or behaviors, but maybe about helping students channel their innate energies and talents into socially constructive and ethical directions, guiding them to use their daemon for good.
Absolutely. This means that self-realization alone, just the mere act of realizing one's potential, cannot be the sole guide for determining what is ethical. We absolutely need external philosophical standards. Think about Kant's categorical imperative, asking if your action can be universally applied without contradiction. Or maybe Rawls's veil of ignorance, where you imagine deciding societal rules without knowing your own future place in society, ensuring fairness. These frameworks, they help us distinguish ethical from unethical conduct. The eudaimonic identity theory, while it's normative in how one ought to live to achieve flourishing, it explicitly acknowledges the complexity of human potential and the necessity of moral frameworks beyond just individual feeling or innate tendencies. Rollo May, actually a prominent personality theorist who wrote extensively on the daemon, he emphasized that denying the expression of the daemon leads to profound apathy or psychological distress. But he also strongly stressed the importance of conscious self-control and self-determination in finding ethically appropriate constructive forms for its expression. It's about conscious cultivation, yeah, not just unbridled release. Okay, so building on this understanding of the daemon, let's look at the actual journey of identity formation from this eudaimonic perspective. Waterman proposes that the psychosocial task of identity formation, that continuous process of figuring out who you are and where you fit in the world, it has three main goals. They're intricately interconnected, often sequential. First, discovering and developing one's personal potentials. This is about recognizing what you're uniquely good at, what intrinsically draws you in, what sparks that feeling of personal expressiveness. It's uncovering those innate aptitudes and predispositions that are part of your daemon. Not just general human stuff, but your particular individual strengths. Second, choosing one's purposes in life. Once you begin to identify those potentials, the next crucial step is deciding what you want to do with them. What larger mission or contribution will you pursue? How will you apply your unique gifts in the world? This moves from simply recognizing potential to actively directing it. And third, finding opportunities for the implementation of those potentials and purposes. This is the really crucial step of putting your discovered self, your chosen purposes, into action out there in the world. It's about finding pathways, roles, environments where your authentic self can truly thrive and contribute, turning potential into reality.
That's a really clear roadmap for personal growth. So what does this all mean for you, our listener, someone deeply interested in education, particularly elementary education? How do these profound goals translate to a classroom setting where you're working with young, developing minds every day? It sounds like we, as educators, aren't just delivering curriculum, are we? We're potentially pivotal guides in helping children navigate this incredibly profound journey of self-discovery. We know everyone has generic human capabilities like walking, talking, developing basic cognitive functions that pretty much unfold naturally given a reasonably supportive environment. Biological maturation takes care of a lot. But what about our individual human nature, our truly unique talents, interests, predispositions? How do we discover those? Traditionally, I think we might see it as a bit of a lottery or maybe a meandering path. Kids try various things and eventually, through maybe sheer chance or external feedback, they find something they're good at.
You're right. It's often conventionally thought of exactly like that, a trial and error process. Or, maybe more accurately, a trial and success process. Children get exposed to activities, sports, music, art, academic subjects. Some they do well, others they struggle with. They get encouragement for successes. Oh, you're so good at drawing, and perhaps discouragement for failures. Maybe math isn't your strong suit. And their own positive or negative feelings, usually related to those external outcomes, then reinforce whether they continue or stop doing something. This process undoubtedly contributes to self-knowledge, but yeah, it's far from perfect. Because, as Waterman's theory points out, there are several significant problems with relying solely on this as the primary mechanism for self-discovery. First, it's often a very gradual, pretty inefficient process. It's heavily reliant on that external feedback from others. And let's face it, our first efforts at anything are rarely successful, right? A child trying to play a new instrument might sound awful initially, regardless of their latent musical genius.
Oh, definitely.
Early successes are often just by chance, not genuine skill, and might not reflect true potential at all. And the people giving the feedback, parents, relatives, even teachers, they aren't always objective, are they? Parents might be uncritically praising out of love or maybe overly critical because of their own anxieties or, unfulfilled desires projected onto the child.
That resonates so much with what you see in the classroom. Imagine a child in your class. You might be told by their parents, oh, they're really good at math. And maybe you observe them solving problems proficiently. Okay. But the key question is, are they personally expressive when doing it? Do they light up with that sense of purpose or profound fulfillment? Or are they simply completing the task because they're compliant or they're seeking external approval, maybe good grades? This external validation, while it can be helpful, it might completely miss that core connection to their daemon. And teachers, while often more objective and knowledgeable than parents in some ways, we also have our own agendas, right? Our own subject area biases. We might not always recognize skills or potentials outside our immediate curriculum focus. A child's real talents, maybe in strategic thinking during games or deep empathy or amazing improvisation skills, those can easily go unrecognized, and the feedback they receive can be misleading if we're only looking at performance on specific tasks.
Precisely. The trial and success model, while it's certainly present, it can be incredibly inefficient for discovering true potentials. The eudaimonic perspective offers a far more direct and I think more powerful alternative that's rooted in internal experience. We often have immediate, strong, positive reactions to activities on first exposure, and this is independent of early success or external feedback. It's not about being good at it yet, but about how it feels inside. We might feel an immediate connection, or the activity just feels right. It starts questions like, wow, why didn't I know about this before? We find them fun, but in a way that transcends mere amusement. It's a deep, compelling enjoyment.
Okay, I can picture this. Think of a student who just gravitates to the art corner during free play, spends hours absorbed in drawing or sculpting, completely losing track of time, even if their early attempts are, well, messy and not yet producing masterpieces that would win awards. Or the child who asks endless why questions during a science experiment, constantly tinkering with the materials, even if their initial hypotheses are wildly off the mark. That profound feeling right, that intense curiosity, that spontaneous gravitation towards a particular activity, that is the powerful internal signal the theory describes. So as an educator, this really shifts our focus, doesn't it? How can you create an environment where these immediate spontaneous connections and deep absorptions can be felt and nurtured? Maybe through offering a wide variety of exploratory activities, allowing for unstructured play, providing open-ended materials, and really keenly observing genuine absorption and interest rather than just focusing on finished products or test scores.
Exactly. That feeling right is a clear, subjective experience of eudaimonia. It indicates a deep mesh or resonance between the activity and the person's innate aptitudes or latent talents. It's not infallible, no gut feeling is, but it's an incredibly powerful predictor of sustained engagement and fulfillment. This internal connection, this deep sense of fit, it sustains involvement across the inevitable challenges and even failures, unlike the fleeting elation that comes from external success alone. If that child in the art corner faces a difficult technique, the inherent rightness of the activity, the joy in the process itself, that's what keeps them going. Whereas a child solely motivated by external praise might quickly give up when the praise stops or the task gets difficult. And this links directly back to the deeper meaning of intrinsic motivation. It's not the activity itself that's inherently intrinsically motivating for everyone. It's the fit of that activity with the person's unique characteristics and latent talents. True intrinsic motivation is experienced when activities genuinely tap into what we have a stronger potential to do well, what feels like an extension of our true selves. This is why we autonomously choose to pursue certain activities, why we care so deeply about finding that right balance of challenge and skill, and why we are willing to invest considerable effort, sometimes against significant odds, even when success isn't guaranteed. The theory suggests that true, deep intrinsic motivation can't simply be created if the underlying potential isn't there. It's about uncovering and cultivating what's already present, like a seed waiting for the right conditions to grow.
So it really emphasizes that our role as educators isn't just about making learning fun with external rewards. It's much more profound. It's about helping children discover what genuinely resonates with their inner potential, what truly activates that deep internal drive. This means providing diverse experiences and observing what truly captures their deepest interest and generates that feeling of rightness. It's about empowering them to find their mountain to climb, their unique path to flourishing, rather than, forcing them up a mountain that someone else has chosen for them, and recognizing that their mountain might look entirely different from what you or maybe society initially expects. Okay, so once these personal potentials start getting discovered, the next step in identity formation is deciding what to do with them. For example, a child with exceptional musical talent could grow up to be a performer, sure, but also a composer, a music therapist, or even a music critic. Lots of paths. Or a knack for problem solving could lead to engineering, maybe forensics, scientific research, or even teaching complex subjects. How do we choose our purposes in life from the myriad of possibilities that open up once we begin to recognize our true potentials?
Well, these choices, obviously, they must be genuinely compatible with our talents and our daemon for true fulfillment to happen. You can't force a square peg into a round hole indefinitely without frustration. The theory actually suggests there might even be predispositions for certain life goals or purposes, making this another potentially profound aspect of self-discovery. Just as we might be predisposed to certain aptitudes, maybe we also have natural inclinations towards certain types of life purposes, perhaps a deep desire to help others, or a powerful drive to create, or a passion for understanding the natural world. However, and this is a really crucial point, the specific goals and purposes available to us, or even the ones we can conceive of, are heavily context-dependent. Our environment, the culture we're in, the opportunities it presents, these profoundly shape what we even perceive as possible options for our lives.
Oh, I can really see that playing out in a classroom. Consider how early exposure to different careers, diverse subjects, or even just different ways of thinking about problems in school can profoundly shape a child's understanding of what's possible for them. If a child only ever sees a few traditional career paths represented, doctor, lawyer, teacher, their perceived options for life purposes might be incredibly narrow, regardless of their innate potential in other areas. But a teacher introducing a child to, say, computer coding, or showing them the work of an architect who designs sustainable buildings, or maybe the life of a social entrepreneur, that might spark not just a skill, but a whole future purpose, or even a lifestyle they hadn't considered. The question then becomes, how broadly do we expose students to different genres of life and learning, beyond the traditional academic and career paths, to truly broaden their horizons and let them see the full range of possibilities for expressing their daemon?
That's exactly right. The wider the array of options available and presented to children, the more likely their eventual choices are perceived as true identity choices, aligning deeply with their natural inclinations. And beyond just professions, the lifestyles associated with different paths also play a significant role. Our preferences for certain ways of living are deeply influenced by what we're exposed to growing up. Some individuals also just have a greater innate tolerance for risk, leading them to less conventional choices, which again relates back to individual human nature. You might have two kids from the same family, similar talents maybe, but subtle differences in risk tolerance or lifestyle preferences could lead them down vastly different paths. This really highlights the importance of offering diverse models and experiences within the educational environment, so children can see the full spectrum of possibilities. And the sources of influence for these life choices, they're incredibly broad, aren't they? Parents, siblings, extended family, friends, romantic partners later on, teachers, religious leaders, community leaders, even media figures. The goal-related decisions and life paths of all these individuals become options we consider, consciously or unconsciously, when shaping our own purposes. And this connects profoundly to the concept of self-concordant goals. These are goals that truly generate intrinsic interest and identity congruence, precisely because they feel like they genuinely belong to us. They stem from our core self, rather than being imposed or adopted externally just to please someone else or fit in. These are the goals we pursue with the most passion and perseverance.
Right. And finally, even with discovered potentials and clearly chosen purposes, one still needs concrete opportunities to enact them, right? To bring them to life in the real world. You might have a brilliant talent for scientific discovery and a profound purpose to cure a disease, but if the societal context doesn't provide the necessary educational infrastructure or the research facilities or the funding, that potential may never be fully realized.
Absolutely. The societal context plays a huge and often underestimated role. Open democratic societies with high role mobility and flexibility, they generally offer wider opportunities for individuals to implement their preferred identity choices. Think about the incredible variety of career paths and lifestyles available in a dynamic, open economy compared to one with very rigid, predetermined social or professional roles. Conversely, closed, hierarchically structured societies, characterized by rigid, ascribed roles, where your path might be determined by birth or gender or tradition, will likely make it much harder, maybe even impossible, for individuals to implement their preferred identity choices. And this can be true even for those technically at the upper levels of the hierarchy, if their daemon pushes them beyond societal norms. In such challenging cases, an individual's options might be really limited, maybe emigration to a society affording a wider array of possibilities, or reconciling oneself to a less expressive, less fulfilling life, or perhaps attempting to radically change the culture itself, which, as history shows, can come at a significant personal cost, sometimes even a catastrophic one. It just reminds us that while the daemon is internal, its full realization depends heavily on external circumstances, and the opportunities that society provides.
Okay, so a really key framework in identity research, one that has significantly shaped how we understand adolescent development particularly, comes from James Marcia. He brilliantly built on Erik Erikson's foundational work on psychosocial development, especially that crucial identity versus role confusion stage. Marcia's identity status paradigm, it describes different ways individuals approach identity formation based on two crucial dimensions. Crisis, which here means an active period of exploration, weighing various alternatives and possibilities, and commitment, which refers to making firm choices or investments regarding those alternatives. This framework has been widely used to categorize how young people, including our elementary students as they grow and mature into adolescence, move through that often complex process of developing their identities.
That's right. And based on those two dimensions, exploration or crisis and commitment, Marcia identified 4 distinct identity statuses. But let's focus on the 3 main processes of identity formation he described, leading to these statuses. First, there's exploration leading to commitment, which culminates in what Marcia called identity achievement. This is the path often seen as the most psychologically healthy for long-term flourishing. It involves a period of active, sometimes intense exploration, where an individual genuinely weighs the benefits and costs of various identity alternatives, could be career paths, religious beliefs, political ideologies, even personal values. They actively assess the fit with who they feel they are, or maybe who they aspire to become. This process, moving from moratorium, which is a state of active exploration, often characterized by some anxiety and uncertainty because of the unknowns, to identity achievement, a state of having made firm commitments after thorough, self-driven exploration. This is seen as offering the greatest promise for successful identity formation and personal well-being. It's a dynamic path, though. If the fit isn't good after an initial commitment, a person might re-enter moratorium in what's known as a mama cycle. Moratorium achievement, continually refining and reassessing their identity choices throughout life.
Okay, like revisiting things.
It's exactly. Think of a high school student who spends time volunteering at different places, talks to professionals in various fields, tries out different clubs, genuinely grapples with what excites them before settling on a college major that truly resonates with their developing sense of self. That's achievement. Second is identification with significant others, which often leads to what Marcia termed foreclosure. This path involves adopting identity elements like career paths, religious beliefs, political affiliations, lifestyle choices directly from significant others. Parents, older siblings, teachers, respected community leaders, often with very little personal exploration or questioning. Commitments formed this way can be very strong and rigid because they're often deeply ingrained from a young age and come with a sense of security and belonging. But critically, the criteria for adoption do not necessarily include a good fit with a person's intrinsic nature or daemon. A child might declare they want to be a doctor simply because both their parents are doctors, or embrace a specific political ideology without ever questioning it, purely because it's the family norm. In the classroom, you might see this as a student who is highly compliant, seems dedicated to a particular subject, say math, but not because they feel personally expressive doing it. Maybe just because they know it pleases their parents or guarantees high marks. There's an outward commitment, but perhaps a lack of internal resonance.
Right, ticking the boxes.
Pretty much. And third, there's leaving identity questions unresolved, known as identity diffusion. Here, individuals essentially avoid establishing firm identity commitments altogether. This can happen for various reasons. Maybe earlier developmental stages weren't navigated successfully, leading to a lack of confidence in their ability to tackle these big life questions. Or it could occur if psychological problems are present: pervasive helplessness, a crippling fear of failure, deep depression, making the resolution of identity questions simply not a high priority, or maybe just an overwhelming task. Individuals in this status might kind of drift from one thing to another without ever truly investing or committing. They often show a general apathy or aimlessness. In a school setting, this might look like a student who has no clear interest, maybe changes hobbies frequently without deep engagement, struggles with making decisions about their future, and may appear disengaged or unmotivated. Not necessarily defiant, just without direction. They might say things like, I don't really care what I do, or just whatever.
So people generally move through these statuses over time, and some paths are considered more progressive, more beneficial for well-being than others. It really gives us a kind of map, doesn't it? A way to understand where a young person might be in their identity journey.
That's right. Everyone conceptually starts in identity diffusion at birth, really, before these identity questions even consciously arise. Progressive movements typically include diffusion to foreclosure, DF, diffusion to moratorium, DFAM to an M, foreclosure to moratorium, FDM. That's where a person starts to question earlier adopted commitments, often a challenging time, and conceptually, moratorium to achievement. Stability within statuses is also common, with foreclosure often being the most stable, because those commitments are firm, even if unexamined, and moratorium the least stable, as it's inherently a period of active change and uncertainty. Importantly, progressive shifts, moving towards achievement, occur more frequently than regressive ones, like going from achievement back to diffusion, meaning people generally tend to move towards more committed and explored identities over time. However, research also consistently shows that slower development through these statuses or prolonged periods stuck in diffusion is associated with lower levels of psychological well-being. So for a teacher, recognizing these patterns can deeply inform how to support a student. Right? A child in foreclosure, for example, might seem highly committed and disciplined. But if that commitment doesn't stem from their true self, it could lead to later struggles with alienation or burnout. And a child in diffusion really needs genuine encouragement to explore, without judgment, to find those sparks.
This is truly insightful. And what's fascinating here is, well, the eudaimonic perspective doesn't just say any commitment is good or that exploration for its own sake is sufficient for flourishing. It adds this crucial, vital layer, pushing us to ask not just if a commitment exists, but what kind of commitment it is and what kind of exploration truly leads to well-being.
This is absolutely key to Waterman's contribution, yes. The eudaimonic identity theory argues that it's not merely the establishment of identity commitments per se that leads to successful functioning and profound well-being. Rather, it's the extent to which those commitments are expressive of the person's individual human nature, that is, how consistent they are with their daemon. Having a firm, unwavering commitment to a career path that you secretly hate, for instance, well, that isn't going to lead to eudaimonic flourishing, even if it brings external success or fulfills societal expectations. It's likely to become a source of significant internal conflict. Commitments that are incompatible with one's personal potentials and deep inclinations can actually become a persistent source of frustration, internal conflict, and profound alienation rather than a benefit. Waterman, recognizing this crucial nuance, proposed adding a third defining dimension to identity: the personal expressiveness of identity commitments. This dimension is meant to supplement Erikson and Marcia's original dimensions of exploration and commitment. And this is why contemporary research, using continuous measures of exploration and commitment, along with measures of personal expressiveness, has become so important for truly understanding well-being. It allows us to capture that subtle but profound nuance. Is a commitment merely a choice, perhaps externally driven? Or is it truly aligned with one's authentic self, leading to deep satisfaction and flourishing?
Okay, this all sounds incredibly insightful in theory. It provides a really compelling framework for thinking about identity and fulfillment. But how do researchers actually measure these, well, sometimes subtle subjective and objective aspects of eudaimonia? How do they gather the empirical data needed to back up these powerful philosophical and psychological claims? How do they distinguish this deeper flourishing from just simple pleasure in a study?
Yeah, that's the critical step, isn't it? Moving from theory to evidence. Alan Waterman and his colleagues have been instrumental in developing rigorous instruments to assess eudaimonic functioning, which skillfully incorporate both the subjective experiences and the objective elements we've been talking about. They've given us tools to move these concepts from abstract philosophy into measurable psychology. The first primary instrument they developed is the Personally Expressive Activities Questionnaire, or PEQ. This instrument is designed to tap into an individual's self-defining activities. Participants are asked to identify, usually 5, activities that they consider truly self-defining things they would genuinely use to describe themselves to another person. Activities that are personally salient, central to their identity. Then, for each of these activities, they rate them on 4 types of subjective experiences. Those feelings of personal expressiveness we discussed, the direct measure of eudaimonia in action, the intensity of flow experiences, that state of deep absorption, general interest in the activity, and hedonic enjoyment, simple pleasure. But beyond just subjective feelings, the PEQ also assesses 4 objective elements related to intrinsic motivation. How much the activity helps them realize their values, their sense of self-determination or autonomy while engaged, the balance of challenges and skills involved, a core component of flow, and the amount of effort they willingly invest. This allows researchers to see how subjective feelings align with these objective markers of deep, intrinsic engagement.
Okay, so that's for specific activities. What about overall well-being?
Right. The second key instrument is the Questionnaire for Eudaimonic Well-Being, or QEWB. This one is designed to assess eudaimonic functioning at the overall person level, rather than focusing on specific activities like the PKQ. It comprises 21 items that include material pertaining to both the subjective experiences of eudaimonia and those objective elements from the PEQ, but framed more generally about the person's life. Scores on the QEWB can then be used alongside continuous person-level measures of identity exploration and identity commitment to study how these three dimensions of identity exploration, commitment, and personal expressiveness contribute to a person's overall psychological well-being and their sense of living a fulfilling life.
Okay, so with these sophisticated tools in hand, what has the research actually found? Does the empirical evidence truly support this idea that living in alignment with your daemon leads to a better, more fulfilling life? What are the key takeaways from, I guess, decades of studies using these measures now?
The research, honestly, consistently and robustly supports the hypotheses derived from eudaimonic identity theory. It provides a strong empirical foundation for these profound ideas. Let me highlight some key findings. First, there's a clear distinction and yet a strong relationship between eudaimonia and hedonia. While they are reliably distinguishable, they're definitely not the same thing, they're also strongly positively correlated. Usually correlations are between 0.75 and 0.85, which is quite high. This means that activities that are deeply fulfilling and eudaimonic are almost always also pleasurable. Makes sense, right? However, that predicted asymmetry consistently holds true. Activities rated high in eudaimonia are almost universally high in hedonia, but many activities are rated high in hedonia. They feel good. But low in eudaimonia, they aren't deeply self-expressive. Like we said, you can enjoy watching TV or eating ice cream, high hedonia, without those activities being personally expressive or contributing much to your deeper, flourishing low eudaimonia. Second, eudaimonia has specific links that truly differentiate it from mere pleasure. It is consistently more strongly associated with self-realization values, that sense of actualizing your potential, the effort one is willingly to put in, and that optimal balance of challenges and skills that characterizes flow states. These are all core aspects of deep, meaningful engagement and growth, quite different from passive pleasure-seeking. Third, and maybe most importantly for overall life quality, is the profound impact on well-being. Subjective experiences of eudaimonia and the pursuit of self-realization values, they are strongly associated with overall subjective well-being and various positive aspects of psychological well-being. This includes things like higher levels of optimism, greater self-esteem, and a stronger internal locus of control, that belief that you primarily control your own destiny, rather than being tossed about by external forces. Crucially, these eudaimonic indicators are also consistently and negatively correlated with anxiety and depression.
That's significant.
Very significant. Furthermore, behaviors that are motivated by eudaimonic drives consistently predict life satisfaction more robustly and enduringly than behaviors motivated purely by hedonistic desires. This strongly suggests that pursuing what truly expresses your best self leads to a more profound and lasting sense of life satisfaction than just chasing fleeting pleasures. Fourth, there's a strong and significant identity status connection. Individuals who are in the identity achievement status, those who have actively explored and then made firm, self-chosen commitments, they consistently report the highest levels of eudaimonia. Conversely, those in identity diffusion, lacking commitments and showing general disengagement, they score lowest on eudaimonia. And identity achievement itself is broadly linked to more favorable psychosocial functioning in general, things like more advanced moral reasoning, higher self-esteem, and notably less anxiety and depression. It's really a hallmark of mature, healthy development. Fifth, and this is absolutely critical to the core of the theory, eudaimonic functioning itself is the key driver for these positive outcomes. Rigorous research shows that it is the consistency of one's commitments with one's daemon, that is, the actual experience of eudaimonic functioning. That is the primary predictor of positive psychosocial outcomes. It's not simply having commitments for the sake of having them or engaging in exploration alone. It's whether those commitments and explorations genuinely express one's true nature. When researchers control for eudaimonic functioning in their statistical analyses, the relationship between just having commitments or just exploring and positive outcomes significantly weakens.
Ah, okay.
But when they control for commitments and exploration, the relationship of eudaimonic functioning itself to positive outcomes remains strong and significant. This truly highlights the unique predictive power of living in alignment with your authentic self. It's the secret sauce, if you will. Sixth, the concepts of purpose and self-concordance are deeply intertwined with eudaimonia. Having a clear, well-articulated sense of purpose in life and pursuing self-concordant goals, Those goals you personally identify with and feel deep ownership over, not just ones driven by external pressures, are strongly associated with greater overall well-being, higher rates of actually achieving those goals, and increased life satisfaction. And this holds true across diverse cultures and age groups. Finally, the developmental trajectory findings are really compelling and reinforce the dynamic nature of this whole process. Longitudinal studies, the ones that follow individuals over long periods, consistently demonstrate that increases in self-realization over time are reliably accompanied by increases in eudaimonia and vice versa. This indicates a powerful self-reinforcing loop where discovering and acting on one's potentials leads to greater fulfillment, which in turn motivates further self-realization and deeper engagement with one's daemon. It's like an upward spiral of growth and flourishing.
So after all this exploration of the theory and the evidence, what does this all mean for you, our listener, someone perhaps deeply invested in elementary education, looking to foster genuine growth and well-being in young people? How do we take these profound philosophical and psychological insights and apply them in a practical, impactful way? In the classroom, maybe even beyond.
Well, this theory offers a really powerful lens, I think. It emphasizes that psychological problems arising early in life, things like chronic anxiety, deep-seated insecurities, maybe a pervasive sense of helplessness. These can make it incredibly difficult for individuals, even young children, to recognize their true potentials, to find genuine meaning, or to function on the basis of self-realization. If there's a significant and persistent gap between one's actual self, how one thinks they are, or how they believe others perceive them, and their real self, their true capacities, their daemon, their innate potential, a person can feel profoundly alienated. This isn't just feeling sad. It's a persistent, unsettling, deeply frustrating feeling. It often manifests as that nagging internal question, why am I doing this? This is not who I really am. In a child, this alienation can manifest in various ways, maybe anxiety, depression, a pervasive apathy, disengagement from school, or even behavioral issues like acting out. They might be struggling internally to reconcile their sense of self with external expectations that feel inauthentic or imposed.
That truly emphasizes the teacher's role then, not just as an instructor of academic content, but as a crucial guide in self-discovery, almost like a sculptor helping to reveal the potential within the stone. Imagine a child struggling with that self-alienation, maybe acting out because they feel like they're living someone else's idea of who they should be. This theory suggests that helping them tap into what feels right, that internal resonance, that eudaimonic signal, even in small ways, could be truly transformative. This could involve offering diverse choices in projects, allowing time for self-directed learning, keenly observing and affirming their genuine interests, even if those interests don't fit a prescribed academic box, and fostering opportunities for creative, authentic expression. It's about empowering them to find their own authentic path, isn't it? Not just fit into a pre-existing mold. It suggests that a classroom is not just a place for instruction, but potentially a laboratory for self-discovery.
Indeed. The research is quite clear on this. When individuals are primarily motivated by fulfilling others' expectations or by external rewards, rather than being guided by their authentic self, it predictably leads to unhappiness, to a lack of personal fulfillment, and often to a defensive distortion or even denial of their true experiences and feelings. While addressing existing psychological problems is absolutely necessary and important, true, sustained psychological health and a high quality of life ultimately emerge from consistent success in eudaimonic functioning, from living in deep, authentic alignment with one's daemon. And here's where the rubber truly meets the road for education. The research explicitly states that schools are well situated to help students recognize the signifiers of those alternatives, meaning the crucial indicators, those feelings that point toward their best potentials. This implies a proactive role for educators. It's about creating environments where children can actually experience that spontaneous feels right connection, that immediate resonance with an activity or a concept, even before they achieve mastery or receive external validation. It's about fostering a climate where they are genuinely encouraged to explore what lights them up from the inside, what aligns with their intrinsic nature, and where their internal signals, those feelings of personal expressiveness, are valued just as much as their external performance or grades. And this raises a truly important, maybe even provocative question for all of us involved in education, doesn't it? If we truly believe in helping every individual, especially our youngest learners, reach their fullest, most authentic potential, how radically might we need to reimagine, perhaps even restructure, our educational systems? What would a classroom look like if its primary goal was not just to impart knowledge, but to actively prioritize the discovery and cultivation of each child's unique daemon? How do we design curriculum, classroom experiences, assessment methods that move beyond just delivering content and instead focus on helping students identify their unique potentials, helping them connect with that profound feeling of personal expressiveness, and then supporting them in pursuing those choices that lead to their most expressive, authentic, and flourishing lives? Hashtag outro.
Wow. Today we journey deep into eudaimonic identity theory, moving far beyond simple, fleeting happiness to explore the profound and enduring fulfillment that comes from living true to your daemon, your true self. We delved into its ancient philosophical roots with Aristotle, saw its powerful modern psychological interpretations through Alan Waterman's insightful work, and uncovered its robust connection to intrinsic motivation and, ultimately, overall well-being.
We've truly seen how this profound process of self-discovery isn't just some lofty philosophical ideal. It's actually backed by substantial, compelling empirical research as a robust and reliable path to a life of genuine flourishing. It's about actively identifying and acting upon your unique potentials, finding and pursuing your true purposes in life, and experiencing the rich, expressive, subjective states that come with that deep alignment. It reminds us that true well-being is not just about avoiding problems or seeking pleasure, but about actively pursuing our highest capabilities and living authentically.
For those of you in education, or simply anyone interested in how we grow into our most authentic and best selves, this deep dive offers, I think, a powerful, actionable framework. It helps us understand personal growth and what flourishing truly looks like. It profoundly reshapes how we might view learning and human development, emphasizing that internal compass for meaning and satisfaction rather than relying solely on external validation or societal expectations. It invites us to think about how we can help the next generation not just succeed by conventional metrics, but truly thrive authentically from the inside out.
And so this deep dive leaves us with a compelling, maybe even challenging question to ponder. If we truly believe in helping every individual, especially our youngest learners, reach their fullest, most authentic potential, how radically might we need to reimagine our educational systems, our curricula, our teaching practices to prioritize the discovery and cultivation of each child's unique daemon? What tangible changes could we make, starting tomorrow maybe, to help every student find what truly feels right and guide them towards their most expressive, authentic selves?
That's a powerful and vital thought to ponder, one that could truly shape the future of education and individual lives. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of authentic living. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep thriving in alignment with your true self.